for this. The great problem is that people will cough or not be able to hold it in. You take 2 hits in a situation where your clothes have been loosened and you can just block backward when you need to. You take 2 hits. Now, many people miss the point because after 2 hits, you feel completely peculiar. You feel as though your body is undergoing some strange kind of anesthesia. All the air has been pumped out of the room. This is the visual acuity thing I talked about last night. The colors jump up. The edges sharpen. And at that point, people say, whoa, wow, it's really coming on strong. And then what you have to do is you have to take one more enormous hit. And this separates the intrepid from the casual, believe me. Because most people, and the facilitator doesn't want to lean on the person. You say, damn it, take the 3rd hit. And say, no, I feel completely weird. I know you feel weird, but take the 3rd hit. Well, if you can coax somebody into that, then what happens is you close your eyes and you see the ordinary warm brown back, closed eyelid scenario, and then these colors begin racing together, and it forms this mandalic, floral, slowly rotating thing, which I call the chrysanthemum. This is a place in the trip that you want to see as you go by it. The chrysanthemum forms, and you watch it for like 15 seconds. If it doesn't give way, then you didn't do enough. You have to do more. One more hit usually will do it. Well, then what happens is it like physically propels you through this chrysanthemum-like thing, and there's a sound like a saran wrap bread wrapper being crumpled up and thrown away, that crackle. A friend of mine says, this is your radio intellecti leaving through the anterior fontanelle at the top of your head. I don't know what it is, but it's something is being... Yeah, right, that's what it is. And then there's this very defined sense of bursting through something, a membrane. And on the other side, and this is now, remember, my experience, on the other side, as you break through, there's a cheer. There's a whole bunch of entities waiting on the other side. And they, that Pink Floyd song, the gnomes have learned a new way to say hooray. Well, it's that place, it's those gnomes. And you burst into this space, and they're saying, how wonderful that you're here. You come so rarely. We're so delighted to see you. And one of the things about DMT that's really puzzling is, in a sense, it doesn't affect your mind. In other words, you don't change. For instance, if you take ketamine, the first thing you notice, the very first thing you notice before the trip hits, is you notice that you no longer are anxious about having taken ketamine. You just sort of, anxiety leaves you. That means it's affecting your mind. It's doing something to the judgmental machinery. DMT doesn't lay a hand on the judgmental machinery. You break through into that space exactly who you were before breaking through. And the usual reaction of most people is something like, and you think, God, heartbeat, normal, pulse, normal, everything's normal, everything's normal, oh God. Because these things are there, and they're hammering at you, and they come forward. They're like jeweled, self-dribbling basketballs. And there are many of them, and they come pounding toward you, and they will stop you and vibrate, but then they do a very disconcerting thing, which is they jump into your body. They jump into your body, and the whole thing is going on in this very high-speed mode where you're being presented with thousands of details per second, and you can't get a hold on. You say, my God, what's happening? And these things are saying, don't abandon yourself to amazement, which is exactly what you want to do. You just want to go nuts with how crazy this is. They say, don't do that. Don't do that. Pay attention. Pay attention to what we're doing. Well, what are they doing? Well, what they're doing is they're making objects with their voices. They're singing structures into existence. These things are, and what they will do is they'll jump into your body.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the ZnZerna Music Hour. My name's P.T. Burnham, and it's a pleasure to have you as guests on this little music journey that I'm about to take. I've got all my aesthetics lined up and ready to go. All my bits and parts. We're in a resting mode right now. Right now, what I'm working with is a completely modular drum beat and melody line, along with some granular stuff from the iPad, which you're hearing right now, actually. You can also barely hear those hi-hats. I've also got some samples ready on the MPC for when we really get into things. So, let me show you what I got. I got the camera switched around a little bit today. I got the pulsar is wired up to all hell, communicating with the Make Noise trio over here. It's also running through beads, which is only doing a little bit of pitch shifting, and mimeophone, which is doing a little echo work. Thank you, Papa Bronsky. I appreciate it. Yeah, if you want to get a good look at it, this is my surroundings. I've also got, of course, Terrence McKenna. Going through the tensor pedal and the tonal recall. So we can manipulate those things as it runs out of an MP3 player, and we can manipulate a bunch of stuff on the spaceship over here. So
and
that's what we're working with tonight. And
there's a spontaneous
shout outs to Hike Keach, Drink Drinks,
by what is normally called
Dust Cat Dream.
It's sort of
cheers to all watching.
And this is accompanied by a modality, something seen. And they're saying, yes, do it, do it, do it. And then after a minute or so of this, the whole thing begins to collapse in on itself. And they literally begin to physically move away from you. And usually their final shot is they actually wave goodbye and they say, deja vu, deja vu, which makes no sense at all if you analyze it. So then you come down, and you're now at minute 6 to 7, and you come down, and it's like being more loaded than you've ever been. It's like about a 700 mic acid trip, but you embrace it as totally down. You say, I'm totally down. I mean, you look like a termite from Arcturus, and the room is decorated in Amish quilts, but I'm completely back.
So I've got some interesting stuff going on.
And then...
Yo, Barry, tonight's going to be special, let me tell you. You can just lean on back and let me take you there. It's going to be fun.
No account of it whatsoever.
I've got all the aesthetics basically mastered now. Basically, they're all laid down. I'll tell you what I got working here. On the pulsar, I've got a series of triggers running and hitting the kick on that pulse, which we're going to be able to take care of with the attack on that channel. We've got hi-hats set up so that they're running two separate patterns, which are alternated, not at random, but at an alterable pace. And depending on that, we will either get 16th notes dominant or 8th notes dominant patterns. Shout outs to McGuire and all the Pulsar folks on YouTube for these tricks, some of these tricks. Snare channel is just being run by recording into the Pulsar using the metal pads. And all that is also generating a signal that is causing the no control to send a series of voltages to various bits, various variables on the no coast and on the Strega. So they're all getting cross varied. The no control is also sending the sounds or sending the impulses that are driving these metal sounds that you're hearing. Those metal sounds are also creating those ghostly sounds, and the channels are separate, so I can totally silence the metal and still have those guys going. We're definitely going for an hour. We might be going for an hour and a half. It depends on how things roll.
And there's a sound like a saran wrap bread wrapper being crumpled up and thrown away. That crackle. A friend of mine said, this is your radio intellect leaving through the anterior fontanelle at the top of your head. I don't know what it is, but something is being... Yeah, right, that's what it is. And then there's this very defined sense of bursting through something, a membrane.
Thanks, Papa Bronski. It's pretty good over here. I'm really enjoying the aesthetic that I've got set up. This is going to be the new aesthetic going into the year. The new year is going to be a lot of doing this. Boom! Fire! Drink drinks if you got them.
And they, you know that Pink Floyd song, The Gnomes Have Learned a New Way to Say Hooray. Well, it's that place. It's those gnomes. And you burst into this space, and they're saying, how wonderful that you're here. You come so rarely. We're so delighted to see you. And one of the things about the MT that's really puzzling is, in a sense, it doesn't affect your mind. In other words, you don't change. For instance, if you take ketamine, the first thing you notice, the very first thing you notice before the trip hits, is you notice that you no longer are anxious about having taken ketamine. You just have anxiety leaves you. That means it's affecting your mind. It's doing something to the judgmental machinery. DMT doesn't lay a hand on the judgmental machinery. You break through into that space exactly who you were before breaking through. And the usual reaction with most people is something like,
oh, definitely check out the wall goo. If one infinite zero comes on in, she actually worked on that record too. Book bags. What's up? I'm really hoping that you enjoy the sample pack.
dual self-dribbling back.
I might just end up sending you some other samples.
There are many of
I've decided to start taking a lot out of what I've been doing and putting them together to use within sample-based architecture.
thing, which is they jump into your body. They jump into your body, and then they jump back out again. And the whole thing is going on in this very high-speed mode where you're being presented with thousands of details per second, and you can't get a hold on what's happening. And these things are saying, don't abandon yourself to amazement, which is exactly what you want to do. You just want to go nuts with how crazy it is. They say, don't do that. Don't do that. Pay attention. Pay attention to what we're doing. Well, what are they doing?
Oh, I gotta check out yesterday's depths. Sunday's depths.
With their voices, they're singing structures into existence. These things are...
That's what the fuck is up. That's tight. That's tight, footbags. I'm gonna go check that out and listen.
So we're kind of downloading this into a lower dimension to even describe it. So what they do is they alter this. Look at this. And as your attention goes towards the object, you realize that what you're being shown is impossible. It's impossible. It's not simply intricate, beautiful, and hard to manufacture. It's impossible to make these things. The nearest analogy would be to say Fabergé egg or something like that. But these things are like the toys that are scattered around the nursery inside the UFO or something. Celestial toys, and they are the toys themselves appear to be somehow alive. The toys themselves can sing other objects into existence. So what's happening is there's just this proliferation of elf gifts, and the elf gifts are moving around singing, and the whole thing is directed towards what they're saying, do what we are doing. And they're very they say,
Yeah, I'm really liking this.
and you feel like a bubble. And now this is normally 5% important, but it happens to me. You feel like some kind of bubble inside your body that's beginning to move up towards your mouth. And when it comes out, it isn't sound, it's vision. You begin to discover that you can count stuff out of your mouth by singing, and they're urging you to do it. They say, that's it, keep doing it. And the whole thing is like, we're now at minute 4.4. And you speak in a kind of glossolalia. There's a constant
You also got this. Oh, and I forgot to plug in this bad boy. Where is it? It should be leading out this. Oh, things are settled with it. There it is. So I got one of the physical objects. I got the crash symbol going, set to be triggered by the pulsar sometimes when the snare hits. It's got a number of variables that are determining whether or not the crash symbol will also hit when the snare hits on the pulsar. So That's what you're hearing there. That's live in my room. It's mic'd up for your pleasure. Let me know if it's too loud and dominating. I can easily turn it down. I love the way that the pulsar's physicality sounds merge with actual physical sounds. It's quite nice. All right.
Pleasure to be here. It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces and so many faces, period. I've never been to Port Wainini before. Probably some of you feel the same way. But I've been doing a lot of traveling recently. I was in New York last weekend at the Open Center, and in Prague 2 weeks before that. So this is the end of a long season of traveling. I'm not home yet, but at least I'm in my own time zone. I want to especially thank Andy Vogt and the Carnegie Museum of Art in Oxnard for inviting me to participate. It represents a real commitment to free speech and First Amendment rights, I think, for an art museum. Art museums have been taking some knocks recently, and so I think they doubly should be commended for their courage. And I want to explain, as Andy mentioned, this is a benefit for Botanical Dimensions, which explains the double price over the ticket. All of this money will go to the preservation of medicinal plants with a history of shamanic usage. That is the special focus of our botanical garden in Hawaii. And before I start the formal lecture, I'd like to just say a little bit about that. As you know, the rainforests of the world are being cleared at a very frightening rate. And perhaps voices are beginning to be heard to halt this destruction of the natural environment. But whether it's halted or not, the destruction of the knowledge of native people concerning the uses of plants in the rainforest, this is disappearing without doubt in the next 30 years, because these people are moving into cities
So what I'm doing now is I'm manipulating no control by sticking it in a point by touching it with my finger. Since the no control is also talking to the pulsar, putting my finger there doesn't just stick on a note, it sticks on a state. And that state can be any number of interesting things. Drum smacking. Yeah, it's just real nice. I can soften that up.
Ever more novel forms of connectedness, ever more exotic juxtapositions of disparate elements. And out of this, I believe, arises implicitly a set of principles that apply to the human artist in the human world. The human artist in the human world lay the wellspring of his nearby what is 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 lay the wellspring of his nearby why would you flee the wellspring of human near? Why would you flee the wellspring of human near? Why would you flee the wellspring of human near? Why would you flee the wellspring of human near? Why would you flee the wellspring of human near? Why would you flee the wellspring of human near? Why would you flee the wellspring of human near? Why would you flee the wellspring? Is the figure at the beginning of human history that unites the doctor, the scientist, and the artist.
So this is all the same state, just with different variables. Nice stuff.
Elevation of titanic emotion, romantic love specifically. The symbolists in the mid-19th century did it by a re-emphasis on the emotional content of the image and a rejection of the previous rationalism. And that emphasis on the image and on the emotions set the stage then for what I think the truly shamanic movements in art, which begin really with Alfred Jarry in the late 1880s and early 1890s. Jarry, you may remember, was the founder of something called the École du Pataphysique, the Pataphysical College. Jarry announced pataphysics is the science. The problem was nobody could understand what it meant or what it stood for, including Jarry. Jarry said nobody could understand what it meant or what it stood for. The problem was nobody could understand what it meant or what it stood for. And problem was nobody could understand what it meant or what it stood for. And problem was nobody could understand what it meant or what it stood for. And problem was nobody could understand what it meant or what it stood for. And problem was nobody could understand what it meant or what it stood for. And problem was nobody could understand what it meant or what it stood for. And problem was nobody could understand what it meant or what it stood for. And problem was nobody could understand what it meant or what it stood for. And problem was nobody could understand what somehow destroy the ideas of the tribe, dissolve the conceptual boundaries of ordinary expectation. Well, in order to do this, it seems to me there is a precondition for the creation of art, which I call understanding. And I don't mean this in an intellectual sense. I mean it in the sense that Alfred North Whitehead intended when he defined understanding as the apperception of patterns as such. As such. There's nothing more to it than that. You see, if we were to look at this room and we were to squint our eyes, and I'm doing this right now, and I see that the room divides itself into people dressed in red and people dressed in blue. This is a pattern, and it tells me something about what I'm looking at. Now I shift my depth of field. Now I'm looking at where men are sitting and where women are sitting. This is a different pattern, and it tells me more about what I am looking at. The number of these patterns, theoretically present in any construction, is infinite. That says to me then that the depth of understanding cannot be known. It cannot be known. Everything is immanent. William Blake makes this point. You can see infinity in a grain of sand. So understanding then is the precondition for creativity. And this understanding is not so much intellectual as it is visual. Visual. And in thinking about this, I realized what an influence upon my own ideas in this area Aldous Huxley was. Not the Huxley that we might ordinarily associate with my concerns, the Huxley of the Doors of Perception and Heaven and Hell, but the Huxley of a very modest book that he wrote in the early 50s called The Art of Seeing. The Art of Seeing. And in that book, he makes the point that a good art education begins a good art education begins with a good drawing. A good art education begins with a good drawing. A good art education begins with a good drawing. A good art education. And many of you have heard me speak of novelty in another context, in the context of nature as a novelty-producing engine of some sort, and ourselves almost as the handiwork of nature. But this same handiwork of nature which we represent, we also internalize and re-express through the novelty of the human world. Well now, if we take seriously the shamanic model as a basis for authentic art, then certainly in the modern context, what we see missing from the repertoire of the artist are shamanic techniques. And it's for the discussion of these shamanic techniques, I believe, that I was brought here this evening. So I want you to cast your mind back to a great seminal moment, germinal moment in the history of human thought, which was about 25,000 years ago, the great glacial populations that had been islanded from each other for about 15 millennia began to recontact each other and reconnect. And out of this comes what is called the Magdalenian Revolution from 18,000 to 23,000 years ago. And what it is nothing less than a tremendous explosion of creativity and aesthetic self-expression on the part of the human species. We find for the first time, bone and antler technology takes its place along with stone technology. Musical instruments appear over a wide area. And cave paintings, some paintings in areas and recesses so remote from the surface of the ground that it takes several hours to reach them, are painted and set up in dramatic tableaus specifically designed to bring together sound, light, and dance in hierarchy, extravaganzas of aesthetic output that invoke a kind of transcendent other, that human beings for the first time are trying to come to grips with and make some kind of cultural statement about. And this pulling into matter of the ideas of human beings, first, in the forms of beadwork and chipped stone and carved bone, within 20,000 years ushers into the kinds of high civilizations that we see around us and points us toward the kind of extraplanetary mega civilization that we can feel operating on our own presence like a kind of great attractor. Now, this whole intellectual adventure in exteriorization of ideas is entirely an aesthetic adventure. Until very recently, utility is only a secondary consideration. The real notion is a kind of seizure by the tremendum, by the other, which then forces us to take up matter, clay, bone, flint, and put it through a mental process where we then excrete it as objects that have lodged within them ideas. This seems to be the special, unique, transcendental function of the human animal, is the production and condensation of ideas. And what made it possible for the human animal is language. If you're seeking the thumbprint of the transcendental on the myriad phenomena that compose life on this planet, to my mind, the place to look is human language. Human language represents to look is human language.
Let's go!
So, how seriously then are we to take this, I'll call it an obligation to follow the shamanic thread back in time? Well, I think that it is a matter of saving our own soul. That this is the real challenge. You know, I love to dig at the yogan by saying nobody ever went into an ashram with their knees knocking with fear over the tremendous dimension they know they were about to enter through meditation. Still truer and more sad, still more true and more sad, is the notion that very few of us pick up our sculpting tools or our airbrush with our knees knocking with fear, because we know we are invoking and acting with the knees at our elbow. And somehow I think the artists need to recover this sense of mystery. One of the most depressing things to me about the art scene, and I had a chance to reconnect with this because I was just in New York, is it now has a kind of direction of quality. You can go into a gallery and you cannot tell whether it is 1990, 1980, 1970, or 1960, because a kind of eschatological malaise has settled over art. All notion of any forward movement toward a transcendental ideal has been put aside for the exploration of idiosyncratic vision. And I grant you, this is a tension, and perhaps in the questioning period we can talk about it. There is a tension between the individual vision and the notion of an attractor or a collective vision which wants to be expressed. But to my mind, this is the same dichotomous tension that haunts the individual in his or her relationship to Tao. You know, we don't want to be lost in ego, but on the other hand, if we completely express the Tao, we have no sense of self. The ideal seems to be a kind of coincidentia oppositorum, a kind of literalizing of a paradox, where what we have is Tao, but we perceive it as ego. And in the application of this notion to the art problem, I would say what we need is a situation where schooling, if you want to put it that way, or a tendency toward a coherent vision expressed by many artists is spontaneous. Each artist imagines that they are pursuing their own vision, yet obviously they are in the grip of an archetype which is rising through the medium of the unconscious. Now, the last time we saw this in American art was in abstract expressionism, which is probably, in terms of the values, in terms of tension and the amount of emotional gain between one artistic moment and another, the break between abstract expressionism and what preceded it was the most radical break in American art in this century. Abstract expressionism actually carried us in to a confrontation with what the quantum physicists were telling us. that the universe is field upon field of integrated vibration, that there is no top level, there is no bottom level, that the ordinary structures of provisional space-time are simply that if we can rise out of the human dimension, then we discover these larger, more integrated dimensions where mind and nature somehow interpenetrate each other. A vision like that, a coherent vision, has yet to announce itself here in the post-history, pre-apocalypse phase of things. Well, I guess I have a kind of reactionary side when I think about the creative endeavor. I believe that the psychedelic experience, as encountered by each of you in the privacy of your own mind, or as encountered by a pre-literate society somewhere in the world, that psychedelic experience is in a way the Rosetta Stone, not only for understanding the encryption that our own lives represent each to ourselves, but it's also a Rosetta Stone for uncoding the historical experience. Art is this endeavor to leave the animal domain behind, to create another dimension orthogonal to the concerns of ordinary history. And this orthogonal domain, to my mind, is glimpsed most clearly in the psychedelic experience. The psychedelic experience shows you more art in an hour and a half than the human species has produced in 15 or 20,000 years. Now, this is an incredible claim. This is why I make it. The energy barrier which separates us from this tremendous repository of transcendental imagery is very low. You know, it's a matter of a little personal commitment and the substances which make the transition possible. The perturbation of brain chemistry is easily done. What is not so easily done is the assimilation of the consequences of this act. Ordinarily, we assume that consciousness is channeled between tremendously deep walls, that there is no way to force a confrontation with the other, or the transcendent, or the unconscious. We tend to assume that, we're going to have to do double duty at the ashram for 3 decades before you're vouchsafed even a glimpse into these places. This is not true. Culture, and this is my message to artists and to anybody else who cares to notice, culture is a plot against the expansion of consciousness. And this plot prosecutes its goals through a limiting of language. Language is the battleground over which the fight will take place. Because what we cannot say, we cannot communicate, and by say I mean dance, paint, sing, mean. What we cannot say, we cannot communicate. We can conceive of things, but we cannot communicate. But And I think every one of us here has done that. And that's a thrilling thing. That is the deep homework. The psychedelic inner astronaut sees things which no human being has ever seen before, and no human being will ever see again. But in fact, this has no meaning unless it is possible to carry it back into the collectivity. And what motivates me to talk to groups like this is the belief that we do not have centuries of gently unfolding time ahead of us in which to gently tease apart the threads of the human endeavor and create a bright new world. That's not our circumstance. This is a fire in a madhouse. And to get a hold on the situation, I think we are going to have to force the issue. Well, one way of forcing the issue, or a chemical definition of forcing the issue when you're talking about a chemical reaction, is catalysis. We want to catalyze consciousness. We want to move it faster toward its goals, whatever those goals are. Well, I believe that to the present moment, language, again in the broadest sense, speech, dance, musical composition, language has just been allowed to grow like topsy. It's been a kind of every man for himself situation. Now what we really need, as we see ourselves moving from one species among tens of thousands of species on this planet, over the past 10,000 years, we have redefined ourselves. And now, like it or not, we are the custodians of the destiny of this planet. Our decisions affect every life form on the planet. And yet, we are still communicating with each other with the extremely precise medium of small mouth noises mediated by ignorance and hate. This doesn't seem like the way to do business as we approach the third millennium. So what I'm hopeful for, and what I actually see happening, I think that we're on the right track. The birth of a new kind of humanity is going to take place, but there are still a lot of decisions to be made. How violent shall this birth be? What toll shall it take upon our mother, the earth? What shape shall the baby be in when it finally is delivered? These are the decisions that artists can mediate and control. Most people are afraid of the unconscious. This is why, you can have a psychedelic compound like DMT, which is very much like ordinary brain chemistry, appears completely physiologically harmless, only lasts 10 minutes, extremely powerful, and generally in this society you have no takers. This is because there has been a failure of moral courage. And the failure of moral courage is perhaps most evident in our own community, the community of the artists. In a way, it's the poets that have failed us, because they have not provided a song or sung a vision that we could all move in concert to. So now we are in the absurd position of being able to do anything, and what we are doing is fouling our own nest and pushing ourselves toward planetary toxification and extinction. This is because the poets the artist has not articulated a moral vision. The moral vision must come from the unconscious. It doesn't have to do, I believe, with these post-meaning movements in art, deconstructionism, and this sort of thing. That art task is to save the soul of mankind, and that anything left is a dithering while Rome burns. Because if the artists who are self-selected for being able to journey into the other, if the artist cannot find the way, then the way cannot be found. Ideology is extremely alien to art. Political ideology, and if you will but notice, it is political ideology that has been calling the shots
I might even
for the
get
last
adventurous
700 years. We can transcend.
try some destruction techniques.
If we can
Yes,
put
I think I
some
will.
other program in place. You cannot transcend politics into a void. And I believe that a world without ideology could be created if that a world without ideology could be created, that a world without ideology could be created, that a world without ideology could be created, then use psychedelics to empower the artist to go into this vast dimension that surrounds human history on all sides to an infinite depth, and return from that world with the transcendental images that can lift us to a new cultural level. The muse is there. The dull maps that rationalism has given us are nothing more than the dull maps. The muse is there. 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 There. The muse is the muse is there. The dome there. Adaptive and suitable ideas can gather and link themselves together into higher organisms. Now, in order for this to happen, there is an obligation upon each one of us to carry To the people in this room tonight that you take a good look around at who's here. Artistic people, psychedelic people look pretty much like everybody else out in society. But we have come here tonight self-selected for our interest in the empowering psychedelic plant and the empowering capacity of art. So we represent an affinity group. The apocalypse of St. John or of somebody. There are a number of these apocalypses. And I think that many of us may come out of a kind of secular background or have not given this kind of a religious idea too much consideration. But my idiosyncratic conclusion, based simply on trying to be honest about the content of the psychedelic experience, is that human history really is on a collision course with a transcendental object of some sort. It is not going to be business as usual into the endless unfolding confines of the future. The very fact that human history is occurring on this planet, the very fact that a primate has left the ordinary pattern of primate activity and gone into the business of running stock markets and molecular biology labs and art museums, indicates to me the nearby presence in another dimension of a kind of hyper-organizing force.
I'm gonna get to thanking my dust cats in a minute.
The transcendental object.
We're gonna jam for another bit.
This transcendental object is casting
And then I'm
an
gonna go.
enormous shadow over the human historical landscape. So that if you're back in ancient Judea, you have an anticipation of the Messiah. If you are at Eleusis, at the height of the practice of the Eleusinian mysteries, you have an anticipation of the dark God. These anticipations of an unspeakable, transcendent reality that are always clothed in the assumptions of the individual artist and the society in which he or she is working are in fact genuine, and that you don't have to give yourself over to fundamentalist religion to connect with the fact that human history is an adventure. And this adventure has a number of startling reverses and sudden plot shifts that are very difficult to anticipate, and that we are coming up on one of those. The civilization that was created out of the collapse of the medieval world has now shown its contradictions to be unbearable. And though no one of us knows what the shape of the new civilization will be, somehow, in the singing of the ayahuasca songs in the rainforest, in the tremendous hypermetallic transcendental off-planetary flash of psilocybin, in the teaching of the self-transforming machine elves that seem to dwell in the DMT dimension, we see that the ordinary linear expectations of history are breaking down, and that the truth of the immanence of the mystery is breaking through all the structures of denial of the male dominator paradigm that has been in place so long. The way to make this birth process smooth, the way to bring it to a conclusion that will not betray the thousands and thousands of generations of people who suffered birth and disease and migration and starvation and lonely death so that we could sit here this evening. The redeeming of the human enterprise all lies then in helping this thing come to birth. And each artist is an antenna to the transcendental other. And as we go with our own history into that thing, and then create a unique confluence of our uniqueness and its uniqueness, we collectively create an arrow out of history, out of time, perhaps even out of matter, that will redeem then the idea that man is good. Redeem the idea that man is good. This is the promise of art, and its fulfillment is never more near than the present moment. Thank you very much.
Okay. So it's been a lovely evening. And I gotta thank my dust cats for giving me the time to get mastery over this stuff and really come with the kind of textural extravaganza that I had in mind. I think tonight we really did it. Last week was pretty good. Week before we really did it for sure. I'm looking forward to season 3. And I want to thank y'all for listening and being with me. All right. It's been a truly lovely evening. And I hope that you'll join me in a couple of Tuesdays. The first Tuesday of the new year, I believe, will be the ZnZerna debut of Season 3. Looking forward to bringing you more of this stuff and doing some more publishing of some samples from it. That's pretty much all I got right now. Taking it easy. Thanks, Footbags, One Infinite Zero. Thanks enormously to Barry. Going to the dust room. Thank you very much to all my Digicats. Make sure you're checking the Patreon. That's gonna have everything. Kenny Creech, Erica Ponziak, Brittany Pittman, Melissa Schick, Gerard Schultz. Thank you. Thank you to the Dusty Cats. Scarlett Herrera, Sam Seeger, Viz, what's up? Eric Akers, Jen Dudley, Becca, Mag Sig, Anna Carmen, Wayne Anderson, Queen Cat. Hopefully me and Babe will be headed up north later. Maybe we'll get a chance to catch up. Thank you to Dogfuck, my Lumicat. A great human being. I've been freestyling with them recently. We've just been going either in the car or at my place or at their place. Just going in over beats like it's playtime. I've been treating rap like playtime, and it's been really good for the heart lately. So thank you, doggy, for making that possible. Helping facilitate. Barry, if you're still tuned in, thank you for everything you do. Barry Cat, Royal Blue, everything is permitted. Nothing is true, everything is permitted. Nothing is true. What up? I mean, I like this. I'm gonna go in on messing it up a bunch more. And I'm gonna replay what I played at the beginning of the night.
Really need leather lungs for this. The great problem is that people will cough or not be able to hold it in. You take 2 hits in a situation where your clothes have been loosened and you can just flop backward when you need to. You take 2 hits. Now, many people miss the point because after 2 hits, you feel completely peculiar. You feel as though your body is undergoing some strange kind of anesthesia. All the air has been pumped out of the room. This is the visual acuity thing I talked about last night. The colors jump up. The edges sharpen. And at that point, people say, whoa, wow, it's really coming on strong. And then what you have to do is you have to take one more enormous hit. And this separates the intrepid from the casual, believe me. Because most people, and the facilitator doesn't want to lean on the person to say, damn it, take the 3rd hit. And saying, no, I feel completely weird. Say, I know you feel weird, but take the 3rd hit. Well, if you can coax somebody into that, then what happens is you close your eyes and you see the ordinary warm brown back, closed eyelid scenario, and then these colors begin racing together, and it forms this mandalic, floral, slowly rotating thing, which I call the chrysanthemum. This is a place in the trip that you want to see as you go by it. The chrysanthemum forms, and you watch it for like 15 seconds. If it doesn't give way,
then you didn't do enough. You have to do more. One more hit usually will do it. Well, then what happens is it like physically propels you through this chrysanthemum-like thing, and there's a sound like a saran wrap bread wrapper being crumpled up and thrown away, you know, that crackle. A friend of mine says, this is your radio intellect leaving through the anterior fontanelle at the top of your head. I don't know what it is, but it's something is being... Yeah, right, that's what it is. And then there's this very defined sense of bursting through something, a membrane. And on the other side, and this is now, remember, my experience, on the other side, as you break through, there's a cheer. There's a whole bunch of entities waiting on the other side. And they, you know that Pink Floyd song, The Gnomes Have Learned a New Way to Say Hooray? Well, it's that place. It's those gnomes. And you burst into this space, and they're saying, how wonderful that you're here. You come so rarely. We're so delighted to see you. And one of the things about the MT that's really puzzling is, in a sense, it doesn't affect your mind. In other words, you don't change. For instance, if you take ketamine, the first thing you notice, the very first thing you notice before the trip hits, is you notice that you no longer are anxious about having taken ketamine. You just sort of, anxiety leaves you. That means it's affecting your mind. It's doing something to the judgmental machinery. DMT doesn't lay a hand on the judgmental machinery. You break through into that space exactly who you were before breaking through. And the usual reaction of most people is something like, you know, and you think, God, heartbeat, normal, pulse, normal, everything's normal, yeah, everything's normal, oh God, because these things are there, and they're hammering at you, and they come forward. They're like jeweled, self-dribbling basketballs. And there are many of them, and they come pounding toward you, and they will stop in front of you and vibrate, but then
they do a very disconcerting thing, which is they jump into your body. They jump into your body, and then they jump back out of your body again. And
whole thing is this
oh, tail, thousand.
Get a hold.
Yourself to exactly what you just did. You just want to just how crazy. Don't pay attention to what
we're doing. Well,
they're singing struck to existence, but they will come to you, come so our description mentioned they what being shown. It's not beautiful, intricate, not intricate, simple, and the heart, it's the ultimate part. The now be to be fab A or some S or something. Things like turn around around UFO.
All right. Have a good night, everybody. Until next time, I hope you have a good holiday. I hope there is comfort, sanity, and warmth. And I will see you on the other side of it all. Have a lovely one. That's it.